Hello, my lovelies. Serenaded by my musical biscuit tin and all the seagulls, I thought I'd spend a day in my studio sewing my new printed pattern, the Bess Collar, and I thought it'd be lovely if you could sew along with me. First of all, let's talk supplies that you're going to need to make your Bess Collar. So, paper scissors to cut out the pattern, fabric scissors to cut out fabric, snippy snips to trim things as you go when you're sewing, a pencil so that you can draw your ruffles. I'm being naughty, you shouldn't actually use a pencil, you should use an appropriate thing like a tailor's chalk or one of those pencils or dressmaker's pencils, but this is all I've got at the moment, so I'm going to mark on the wrong side of the fabric, so it should be okay. Pins, a meowing cat in the background, tape measure and some kind of ruler. I'm using my Pattern Master. Good old faithful as always. So let's talk a little bit about fabrics, materials that you need to make the Bess Collar. It's a really versatile pattern and it doesn't take up much fabric, so you can be really experimental or you can treat yourself to something maybe that's a little bit more spendy. Here I've got a gingham. Everybody loves a gingham. I personally love to look like a picnic blanket. This one's a corded poly cotton gingham, I think. Then I've got a couple of Liberty prints because Liberty. Literally heaven on earth. I can't wait to go back there. This one I bought to make placemats at Christmas. It's got all these teeny tiny lovely little stars, so I think I'll be using that. But cotton lawns are great, plain or patterned. You can use a Pima cotton, which is what this is. This is very pretty, this one. It's just a little bit more thick than, can't do grammar, can't speak English today. It's a little bit weightier than a lawn, but lovely. And then also there's a cotton poplin that you can use, which is brilliant for this because it's a little bit more structured and you can get a lovely crisp result with that. And also you can get lots of, so like quilting cottons or broadcloths or poplins, they're all a similar type, and they are great and really easy to use. And then you can use a ribbon to make the ties at the front. I'm actually going to be making ties out, I think I'm using this fabric today, I'll have a think, making ties out of the actual fabric. And if you don't want to draft the ruffles for your Bess Collar, you can just buy ribbon or pre-bought ruffled trim. This one's a very pretty broderie anglaise, and you can use that, which makes this project even quicker because this is quite a quick project. Then you are going to need some kind of fusible interfacing for the neckband piece of the pattern. I'm not a huge fan of fusible interfacing, so I'm just going to be using this calico as an interfacing today, and it works really well. And if you want an even stiffer neck, because who doesn't love a stiff neck, you can use spray starch and starch your neckband. The Bess Collar pattern envelope comes with a booklet, the printed pattern, and this mantra on a postcard, making the world a better place one stitch at a time, which I think we do when we make our own clothes and things for the home. The booklet, which has got an illustration by me on the front, has a clear illustrated step-by-step guide taking you through the process, and then the pattern is printed on a good quality paper, and there are only 2 pieces which you will then need to cut out with paper scissors, which I'm doing very quickly indeed here. This is a really straightforward project, so I think it's suitable for the more confident beginners. First, you're going to pin your fabric and then cut it out with your fabric scissors. As you can see, you really don't need much fabric at all. And then you're going to do the same for the under collar and neckband. I'm using 2 different fabrics to make this reversible. The instructions for making your ruffles, measurements, etc. are all contained in the handy dandy, fully illustrated step-by-step guide. Everything's cut out. I have my neckband interfacing cut out of this calico, but do use interfacing, fusible interfacing if you prefer it. This is going to be my outer collar, and I'm going to cut the ruffles out of this fabric as well. So the outer collar and the interfacing are going to go together. And then I had just a little bit of this Mauve Arena print from Liberty Tana Lawn, and I'm doing the inner collar in this, which will make it reversible. So 2 collars for the price of 1. So you're going to interface your outer neckband and then sew that to the outer collar. You sew the neckband to the collar of the under fabric, and then you sew your ties and you sew your neckband ruffle at the end. You put right sides together and just sew at each end, and then you sew the big ruffle, the one that goes around the collar, together in the middle, and then sew the ends. And then you have an obligatory tea break and a hot cross bun because it is spring and nearly Easter. And then you snip the ends of your neckband and collar ruffle so that you get a nice crisp point. Make sure you don't snip actually into the main body of the ruffle. And then you turn it through. And I'm using one of my favourite little gadgets. I don't really go in for gadgets, but this is a really good one. It's a point turner. And then you press both of those wrong sides together so that the raw edges are together, so that you can then do the gathering stitches. I'm also neatening the corners of the ties, which you can use ribbon, and that's what the pattern actually calls for, but I just wanted to try this out. And then you perform a little bit of an operation on the ties to pull it through. I use my snips, I use these for my overlocker, and I spend a pleasurable few minutes pulling that through to the right side. So a quick update, I've sewn the basted neckband to the collar with the right side fabric, and I've sewn the collar to the neckband of the underside fabric. Sewn both the ties there and pressed them. So I've done my gathering stitches on the neckband. This one's the neckband ruffle. I've set the machine to the longest stitch, and I've run 2 edge stitches, rows of edge stitching all the way along the raw edge, and I've left the other side untacked. There are lots of different ways that you can do ruffles, but if you just hold the 2 threads from one of the sides, ignore the other threads, and then you can just gather along. What I like about doing it this way is you get a really nice, neat ruffle. And a little note on the bigger ruffle that goes around the collar. What I've actually done is I've done it in 2 sections. So I've sewn from the centre out to the edges, and why I do it this way is, one, I mean, I've got a seam here which indicates the halfway mark or the centre back, but if you don't have that, all these threads, they indicate the like a halfway point or something, so you can use them as a sort of a balance point. And because I've done them in 2 sections, it just makes it a little bit less frustrating if the threads break, because that does sometimes happen, and that's so annoying. Like, that is super annoying when you have done these stitches along meters of fabric. So I always do my gathering in sections. It might seem like a bit of a faff, but actually it makes life easier in the long run. Neck ruffle and the collar ruffle has been all gathered and basted just with an edge stitch to anchor it in place. Otherwise, I suppose you don't have to do that, but if you leave that step out, things can become very faffy, technical term. So now I'm going to just pin in the middle. You can measure, make sure you get these exactly. I'm just guesstimating for the sake of my sanity, and do them on both sides, just right bang in the middle. Yeah, and you can baste those in place, but what I'm going to do is get the under collar and then right sides together, starting up the top here. I'm going to pin all the way around, but I'm going to leave a gap about here. So I pinned, leaving this. I'm not going to sew here. I'm going to start sewing from this one all the way around at the seam allowance. I'm going to pivot on the corner. I'm going to be careful when I get particularly up to this neckband point, so this pin is holding the tie in place, and you just need to be a little bit careful of the neck ruffle which is there. You've got to make sure that it is really folded out of the way, otherwise it gets caught up. Go all the way round, and so that's the next thing that I'm going to do on my sewing machine. And now for the magic. I have sewn all the way around the collar, and this is a process called bagging out, where you leave a gap and you sew all the way around something and then you pull it through the gap. So I'm pulling my collar through the little seam where I haven't sewn it, so I'm pulling it all through to the right sides, and here you can see the ruffles coming through. Make sure as you pull through that you neaten all the seams, so you make sure that all the ruffles are pulled through and the whole collar lies completely flat. And then at this stage you can press the whole thing, and you can then pin the gap closed, and then just slip stitch the opening closed, and your collar is then ready for you to wear. And ta-da! Here's my finished Bess collar. I named the collar after Queen Elizabeth I, also known as Good Queen Bess. So I can't wait to wear this and feel very regal and queenly myself. Thank you so much for spending time with me today. If you've enjoyed yourself, then please do like this video and subscribe, and come back and share more of my sewing adventures with me. Take care, my lovelies. Bye.